This is Sprint Review 3 for AR Fortress West Point Capstone team. For our agenda, we're going to go over our product vision, our sprint goal for Sprint 3, our capacity, into our sprint products, and then a little bit of reflection on the sprint and plans for future work. Our product vision hasn't changed. It is to create a fully functioning app that accurately displays Fort Willis in a fun way that all users can use. Our sprint goal for Sprint 3 is to start work on our critical design review by putting together our test plans while continuing to input 3D models and anchoring features into our application. Additionally, our goal is to improve the user experience by adding UI improvements and layered learning features. For our capacity, we planned for 134 hours and we completed 128. Our planned hours are a little bit messed up because we lost a member of our capstone team during the middle, so we had to adjust, and so we're a little bit off on our planned hours. As you can see on our burn down chart, it says that we planned for 159.5 hours, but if you were to add up our Trello boards, we actually planned for 134. Again, this is because of our having to adjust with the losing a member of our capstone team.
Throughout this sprint, we have worked very closely with our graphic designer. Our biggest obstacle so far has been creating the augmented reality version of Fort Willis. I began by sending the designer rudimentary drawings of each wall, including dimensions and basic descriptions of the varying textures of the fort. Based on what was sent to him, this is the first rough draft of Fort Willis. While the basic shape looks great, there are several historical inaccuracies throughout the fort. The depths within the fort needed to be changed, allowing for a raised gun platform and a bomb-proof built within the earthwork. Additionally, the placement of the logs needed to be such that they were built within the walls, providing stability for the structure of the fort. After our feedback, this is the second draft of the fort. The graphic designer did an excellent job in responding to the changes we wanted made. After viewing this design, we relayed to the designer to make the steps into dry stack stone. We also conveyed to him that we wanted the fort to look more rugged and indicative of the time in which it was built. This is the final draft we have right now of the fort. There are still some changes that need to be made, but overall we are very impressed with the work our graphic designer has done and the time that he has done it in. We would like to change the texture of the top of the fort, making it look more rugged and less cookie cutter. We would like to see those same changes made for the logs holding up the structure of the fort, making them look more like they've been cut from a tree and less like plywood. The designer has also been able to do a great job of placing the fort on the LiDAR terrain of West Point. This way, the user will be able to accurately see how the fort interacted with the terrain by using these real scans of West Point.
All right, since last sprint, we worked on improving the user interface in order to make our app more usable and friendly. So this is a demonstration video showing the new user interface that we implemented using SpriteKit. So as usual, the icon is the same. What changed was the menu here. So we use SpriteKit to make the menu more dynamic. So you could do this by just touching the iPad. This is the starting menu, and when I press start, it goes to the site selection. So site selection is basically a place where you could choose the fort that you want to view. So right now we only have Fort Willis working, and for the future, you could have Fort whatever on there. Yeah. So when you get into Fort Willis, there will be a description of Fort Willis, like a scroll down text box and a picture as well. And as usual, the user interface is the same. So when you touch the screen, you get into the AR mode, and Haley's gonna explain the new improvements that happened at the AR.
So what I worked on this sprint was improving our capabilities in AR mode, mostly by having us be able to rotate the images, as you can see on there. The castle is currently a placeholder until we get the actual fortress graphic, because it will be around the same size that we're hoping the fortress will be. I also put in the ability to zoom. As you can see, you can zoom the image all the way up and make it large, and then zoom it and make it very small. The other major improvement I made was the ability to switch between objects while keeping them in the same spot, so keeping them having the same anchor. As you can see, when we switch between the castle and the musket, the image stayed in the same spot even though it switched images, which is a huge improvement because we want to be able to keep the images in the same spot on the table after the actual user places down the initial image. As you can see, all of these features, including the zooming and the rotating, work on all of the objects that we've put into the app, and so you can still see the old objects from last year's group and be able to explore them as well.
So since Haley and I worked on different aspects of the app, we use GitHub in order to merge our different versions of the app. So as Haley worked more on the view controllers for augmented reality, I worked more on the user interface using SpriteKit. So since we were working on different things, we definitely needed help from GitHub in order to merge our different.
Throughout this sprint, we've been uploading different versions of our app to the App Store as we've been making major changes to it. Currently, our version 1.7 is waiting for review. This is the finalized version of our app for this sprint, with all of the added anchoring features as well as the zoom and improved UI. You can look at the activity about how many times we've uploaded the app as we've gone through the different versions, as well as how many versions have actually gone into the App Store. The review process goes pretty quickly, so by the time we actually present this sprint, it should be available on the App Store for any of you to download.
Here we have the results of the tests that we've been able to conduct so far. We've been able to go to the lab and test the barracks as well for phone carrier providers, and as well as the Dren for downloading the app and using it within our devices. The average download speeds for being in the lab on a Verizon device was about 35 seconds to download the app completely. AT&T saw slightly better performance, while the Dren, unsurprisingly, was the worst. In the barracks, we see a similar trend here, with AT&T being the preferable service provider. At 35 seconds, we feel that this is within our acceptable range of what we could expect a user to be patient enough to use to download. As far as our processing, the two devices that we've tested it on were an iPhone 8s and the iPhone X. At rest, with the app running in the background, the processor was being drawn at 12% of the total processing usage on the phone. By spawning images in and repeatedly tapping and navigating the device, we were able to get a final spike of a max spike of 21% processor draw. Similarly, with the iPhone X, with a greater processor within the iPhone X, it was able to withstand most of the tests that we were putting it through and most of the stress tests that we were giving it. So the max spike that we saw with that was 15% processor usage. As far as our total app size, this is where it stands so far with all of the test objects in it. The max size is 239 megabytes, and this is the breakdown by image within the app. Using this data, we were able to provide estimates along with drawing information from the graphic designer of what he estimates the final app size will be. So we've been able to create this graphic, which includes all of the final images that we will be including into our app, as well as the total estimated size that we can expect. At 272 megabytes, this is only within 15% difference of our current test results. So we should expect that our data should be similar to our average download speed and processor draw. Additionally, the graphic designer has been paid as of Monday, and here's where we stand so far with where we're at with our fort design. This is where we began. So as you can see, the process required to get from A to B here. There's a lot of conversation going back and forth where we give new requirements, we adjust what is current work so far. And right now, we are happy with what we have, but there's still a ways to go as far as the finished product. The most recent update he's pushed to us is the fort and the battery, which is lying on top of the LiDAR scanned ground that we've been able to give him. The same process that we were going to be doing with this fort, that we started here and we got to there, we're going to be doing the same thing with the battery to get it to up to par where we would like it.
For reflections of Sprint 3, our first one is being able to accurately describe the graphics to the graphic designer. We had to adjust multiple times the graphics that the designer sent to us and change little points of the graphics to make sure that they were historically accurate. So we just need to make sure we understand how to exactly describe to him in a better way so that we're not going back and forth multiple times. The second one is it takes a lot of time to acquire money for the graphics. We thought that we might be able to get money for the graphics at the beginning of the sprint, but it took almost the entire sprint to be able to actually get the graphics paid for, so we need to account for that as we go into future sprints. And then we need to plan in time to integrate and merge the different versions of the app because of the difficulties of Xcode. For our product roadmap, the big things for Sprint 4 are going to be the final design review and Picatinny Arsenal demo. We need to backwards plan from there to make sure that we have our boards and presentation ready for when we do go to Picatinny Arsenal. And we should have all of the graphics into the application and completing most of our testing and everything going into Sprint 5.